What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and today I invite you yet again to pull up a chair, grab a snack, and get a tasty beverage. And let me talk at you for a minute. So over this past weekend, I received what I consider to be an exceptionally auspicious email. It was from none other than Adam Loper, aka Uncle Adam, aka the Tabletop Minion. And he was contacting me to see if I wanted to take a moment and talk to all of you about Snarl. So Snarl is the newest collaboration between Adam and Vince Venturella of great Warhammer painting fame. And it is a yearly zine. Now, for those of you that are either too young or not into the scenes that would have passed these around, a zine is a very small self-published magazine. I actually did a very small, much worse than this one in high school for local bands. They were predominant around punk music scenes, hardcore scenes, things like that. They're usually small and self-published and traditionally are done on a Xerox machine. Now, this one comes as a PDF, and when you buy it, you get several options. You get just a regular PDF, a like A4 booklet print size, which is what I will always opt for because I like physical media. And then you also get the character sheet for the new micro game that is in here, Tanks for the Apocalypse. There's also some things in here for existing games. There's stuff in here for Reign in Hell, as well as Space Station Zero. Nothing from Majestic 13 that I saw. Yep, Reign in Hell and Space Station Zero. So let's crack into here and talk about what's in this zine. So you guys know me. I'm always going to talk about the art first, because as an artist, that's the part that really sparks joy in me. Now, most of the art, there is some miniature photography, but most of the art is this wonderful grayscale comic style art. There's another one in here right near the beginning. Yeah, this one right here that's just phenomenal. Top shelf stuff. Now, I did not, for once, this is not me being cheap. This is sent out in black and white. That goes back to the starts and the roots and the traditions of the zine. They were the only color you might would have seen in a zine is if they happened to print it on colored paper, like a high-vis yellow or a high-vis pink, something like that. But generally, they are black and white publications. So this is not me just taking the easy route and not burning up my color cartridge. This is intended to be this way. There's a little piece of model photography for Thanksgiving. That being said, I love it. I love that art style. And let's get in here and talk about what's inside of it. After a short forward from Snarling Badger Studios, we get straight into the new micro game, Tanks for the Apocalypse. So this is an alternate weird history setting game. This is right when they tested the first atom bomb. So July 16th, 1945. And what happened is when they did that, when they tested that first nuclear bomb, it ignited part of the atmosphere, resulting in an exterminatus level apocalyptic civilization ending event. However, there were some pockets of humanity that managed to stick it out because we are like cockroaches. We're everywhere and it's hard to get rid of all of us. Those people who survived, in the US anyways, ended up finding something that the United States government left behind for them. You see, during World War II, the United States government lassoed the majority of its heavy industry into the war effort. One of the first places, if not the first place, to sign up for that was where's the name? I want to make sure I do this right. The Lemme Locomotive Works of Ohio, where they manufactured and produced the first Shermans. Shermans. Just thinking about all that artillery and ordnance brings me joy. There were other places around the country where similar stores of vehicles were discovered, but the Shermans were the best because they were rugged. They were fairly simple machines, despite the fact of sometimes if you hit them just right, you could ignite their ammunition. They were easy to fix on the fly and easy to keep running. So now we live in a world where we have roving bands of tank drivers, some who are bandits out to ransack every village and settlement that they can find, and then we have those settlements that have managed to find their own tanks with which to defend themselves. In Tanks for the Apocalypse, you are one of those tank pilots. Now, as far as where you come from and what you do and why you're doing what you do, that's up for you to decide in your own headcanon, and I like it when games give me that option. I also love that Shermans are the tanks that they talk about because of a holiday tournament that I've been to the past couple of years called Tanksgiving, which is a bolt-action Tank Wars event, I have a large collection of Shermans. Maybe large is there. I have like 6 or so, 5 or 6, somewhere in that range. So I've already got the recommended thing to play this game with. Now, they all are just basic drab green Shermans, and with this, you're just out here being either an outlaw or a townsperson. So you could paint this tank however you wanted. There's no boundaries except those that you create for yourself with your imagination. And that's pretty cool too. But I'm not going to repaint mine, and I'm not going to print new ones. I'm just going to use the off-the-factory line Shermans that I've found, or that I have. To play the game, you will need said Shermans or whatever tanks you are going to use, but I think it's best that if you're not going to use a Sherman, at least use something of a similar footprint to a Sherman. Like, I wouldn't come in with a Pershing, because way lot bigger, and I also wouldn't come in with like a Panzer II, like a very small, like almost tankette. You want something that's going to match about that footprint. So you need those for everybody. The game is for 2 to 10 players. You need a 3x3 play area. You need D10s and D6s. And then you need the record sheet. You also need 6 tokens of some sort, whatever you use. Grab your box of generic tokens or go-to tokens that you have from another game that you just use for everything. We all have that. Don't lie to yourself, you do. And then you need the record sheet. Now, again, the record sheet comes in the PDF when you buy it from Wargame Vault, but it is also available for download at snarlingbadger.com. The sheets look like this. And I love that it's almost like a diagram drawing of the tank. I love that it's very simple. And then we've got some quick reference kind of information at the bottom, which is a great place for that to be. On that sheet, your tank has 3 main stats. You have action dice, which are what you use to do things in the game. The base action dice of all tanks is 8. You have defense, which you start with a score of 10 on each of your facings. Front, back, left, and right. And then we have armor. You start with a total of 15 armor points per side. And that's how you're gonna represents the amount of the tank's armor. So that's essentially your health pool. Defense is armor in combination with speed. The more heavily armored you are, or faster its movement, the harder it is for you to be hit. So it affects the target number, I assume, that they need to hit you. Now, the grand purpose of the game is to obliterate your opponent, to be the last tank still spinning treads. However, at the beginning of the scenario, or the beginning of the game, you also roll a scenario. Now, the scenario in here is a secondary objective. It's basically there as a tiebreaker in case more than one tank doesn't get blown up. A game consists of 10 turns. In those 10 turns, each tank activates once, and only once. And in that activation, they're moving, they're shooting everything that they need to do. So when you start a turn, you have to determine the activation order. It uses a chit system, like a random draw chit system. So you need to put dice of equal size but different color, or tokens that are the same size but have different numbers on them, or something along those lines that you can't distinguish it by touch but can distinguish it by sight. And then you draw from the bag. Whoever you draw, that person does all of the stuff that their tank can do, all their moving, all their shooting, all their everything. And then you draw the next one. Now, alternatively, if you're only playing with 2 people, it's acceptable to just make a high roll, and whoever wins that high roll must activate first. You don't get the option, you have to go first. I feel that in this game, going second might be better, but I love a random activation system. I'm never going to complain about that, especially if you're actually playing a big game where you got 10 people playing this, that could be a lot of fun. So at the start of your turn, you must once you figure out who's going first, you determine the action dice for the turn. Everybody's starting pool is 8. However, that can be modified if you take too much damage and stuff like that. So that forces some choices for you as the player about whether it's more important to position yourself or to possibly retreat or to make with the boom boom. It's a tough choice. Once you've figured out your dice pool, you have to allocate those dice. So you have to decide before you do anything how many dice you're going to spend on movement, how many on attacking, how many on whatever. And you have to allocate all those dice before you take any actions. Now, you do have the option later in your activation to opt out of any of those actions. So if you had like 4 shoots and 3 moves and you take a move and then you ended up having a good line of sight, you could just, now you can't change them to something else, but you can choose not to do all of those things because there may be situations where doing those things puts you into a bad position and the game is not going to force you into a bad decision. That's nice. I like this. I'm excited to give this a go. This is new for me this is a new one for me where you've got to kind of decide what all the actions are going to be before you take the actions. So that's fun. That's something different, and I'm excited to give that a go. Also worth mentioning, once you've allocated those dice, you can then choose to do those actions in any order that you want. So you don't have to allocate, I'm going to move twice and then I'm going to shoot and I'm going to move again and I'm going to shoot again. Once you've allocated the actions, you can do them in any order in addition to not doing all of them. When you go to move, you've decided how many dice you've allocated to your movement. You can choose any number of those dice at a time, and then you roll a d6 for each of them, and then add those numbers together, and that's how far that tank can move. You are allowed 1 pivot up to 90 degrees at any point during your movement, but only once per movement. So if you had 5 dice in movement, you spend 3 on a move. You can then move up. You can execute your pivot, and then continue moving the rest of the movement that you had rolled up. And then on your next movement, when you got those 2 dice left that you're going to spend on movement, you can pivot there as well. But other than that pivot, the tank is always going forward. The game goes forward, my guy. If you come into contact with pretty much anything, you'll drive through it. However, if the thing that you are driving through is more than 1 inch tall, that area is difficult terrain. It costs you 2 inches of your movement allotment per inch that you move through it. And when it comes to your movement allotment, let's say you rolled 3d6 and you got a 8. You don't have to move the full 8 inches. You just can't move more than the 8 inches. As you're moving, you become harder to hit because you're a big, fast, heavy moving thing. So for every 5 inches of movement that you have in a movement, you get +1 defense to all sides up to a maximum of 3. If you're taking multiple movements, like if you split your movement allocation dice, then you have to choose one of your movements when you're done with everything, and that will be the one that determines your bonus. So if you move 10 inches in one movement and 6 inches in the other movement, you would want your bonus to come from that 10-inch movement, not from the 6-inch movement. But it wouldn't be you get 2 for this movement and then another +1 for that one. It's in a single movement every 5 inches that you travel. Beyond the movement in this section, we have some special actions, and I'm not going to go super deep into these and all the mechanics of them because I just don't think that's necessary. I don't want to give away all the goodies. Just want to make you want another taste. So you can ram. Pretty self-explanatory. You drive your tank into another tank. You can pop smoke. That's going to be something with your defense. Make it harder for them to see you. You can perform evasive maneuvers. You can steady aim, so give yourself a better shooting score. Modify your shooting bonus. And you can floor it. Accelerate into to floor it, you have to allocate all of your movement dice. I needed to see what that one was about. Now, we are going to spend some time and talk about the attack actions and that process for how that works, because the attack action is a part of several of the special actions. So let's talk about how we attack and defend and all that good stuff. Attacking is pretty straightforward. You declare your target. You determine line of sight by drawing a line from the center of your turret to the closest part of the enemy tank. This is to help determine the facing of the other tank that you're firing on. Your opponent will then inform you of the defense on that side of the tank, and you will roll 3d6. And there's a little handy dandy chart right here. So if you are less than their defense, you miss nothing. If you're equal to defense, up to +2 over their defense, it's a glancing hit. It deals 1d6 damage. If it's greater than over 2 of their defense, it's a penetrating hit. It's 2d6 damage. And if you roll an 18 or higher, it's 4d6. Now, it says 18 or higher on 3d6. Obviously, the highest you can roll is 18. There are potential modifiers that you can have, both positive and negative, that could potentially get you over 18. One of those modifiers that I want to mention real quick is the cover system for the game. Now, Adam has said, or they have said, and I think Space Station Zero, that they really don't like cover. They don't like dealing with it in games, and so their cover systems tend to be very, very simple, and that's good. It's effective. There's a cover is a thing where there's a line that you have to walk. If it's too basic or not there, then that doesn't feel good. But if it's convoluted to the point of being breakable, that's also not good. You got to find that happy medium. And I think that they've done that here. So if there is something between you and your target that is at least 1 inch high, or more than an inch high, and more than 3 inches away from the attacking tank, then they have cover. If they have cover, it is a -2 penalty to the 3d6 attack roll. Very basic. No heavy, no different kinds of cover, just you got it or you don't, and if you got it, this is what you get. I like that. You take damage, and if you look at the sheet here, there are these boxes beside it. Those are the damage trackers for the thing. So what I will probably do is laminate these sheets. Like, I'll write in the name of my tank maybe. Or maybe I'll just laminate the sheet, because I don't even think there's a place to put a name for a tank. There isn't. So I think the thing here is to laminate the sheet and then use a dry erase marker. No, a wet erase marker. You want the one where you got to lick your finger to wipe it off, because that will not wipe off on its own while you're playing. You have to deliberately and purposefully get rid of it. So I always recommend the wet erase markers over the dry erase markers. So every time you take damage on that facing, you fill in one of those boxes. When you fill in one of the boxes that says system damage, there's a little chart in here, and it's probably maybe on the sheet. It is on the sheet. It is at the top of the sheet. God, I love that. So if it's a front or back facing, you roll on this. You roll a d6 on this one. If it is a side facing, you roll on this one, and it tells you what happens. So if you roll a 1 on the front, it's track damage, and it's -1 move to your first dice. Engine damage, -1 action dice. Pretty straightforward things that you would expect from a tank. Now, don't get it twisted. The Lemme Locomotive Factory made a lot of tanks, but there's still a limit, and this has been a while since all of this happened. These tanks have been abandoned, reclaimed, discovered, stolen, rebuilt, modified, time and time and time again over the years. So when you start your game, you get some extra goodies and baddies to Salt Bay onto your tank. You must roll a d6 on starting modifications, and these include things like a 76mm high velocity gun, reinforced armor, a retooled engine, a hull retrofit, a ramming modification, or an enhanced suspension, which will all give you various good things. But you also have to consider, yes, these tanks have been upgraded over the years, but they're also old. Like, really old. So we also have to roll for a malfunction. And those can be an ordnance flaw, a track issue, a broken engine, a weakened hull, a cracked stabilizer, or an unaligned suspension. And these are going to give you a negative. So you're going to get some good and some bad that goes into your tank. We then have to choose a scenario, or in the scenario, we generate our terrain, we determine our dangerous or difficult terrain, and we determine secondary objectives. And there should be a 1d3 plus 3 pieces of terrain. And obviously, you can always just, if you got an idea for something you think would be a cool table to fight a tank battle on, then by all means, do that. If you would like it to be a little bit more procedurally driven, they give you the means to accomplish that. Sorted out terrain, we have a table to play on. We're ready to talk about secondary objectives. These are kind of the tiebreakers / extra ways to get some points. And they can be looking for foodstuffs, a water source, medical supplies, an ordnance depot, captured villagers, or fuel reserves, because you got to keep those tracks turning. When you start the game, each player is going to roll 2d6, and the high roller places the first tank. And then it goes back, you continue on until everybody's got their tanks on the board. The path to victory is our next session. This is how we score. So when you damage an enemy tank, you get a point. When you complete a secondary objective, you get 3 points. And if you destroy an enemy tank, you get 6 points. The game does allow for a little bit of linked play in the post-game process. Obviously, if you just want to play one-off tank battles, have at it. But if you want to link your games, the first step to doing that is repairing your damage. And then you get to roll for an upgrade. When you repair, if you won the battle, everything goes back up to full health. If you lost the battle, any facing that took 3 or less damage goes back up. Anything that took 3 or more damage repairs 1d3. With the upgrade, everybody gets to roll, win or lose, but whoever had the highest secondary objective score gets a +1 bonus to the roll. Your options are nothing, armor plates, improved ordnance, refined fuel, enhanced fuel, or permanent upgrade. You can always select something lower on the list. So if you rolled a 6 for permanent upgrade, you could select 1 through 5 instead of that 6, but you can't go higher than what you rolled. And that is Tanksgiving. Short, sweet, and violent. I think I'm going to really enjoy that one. When I first saw it, I was thinking, okay, well, it's going to be kind of like Brutal was. Brutal was a game that Joe McGuire did for Blaster 4, I want to say. That's a head-to-head tank battle, but that game's a lot more complex than this one. There's a lot more to that game. Not that game is overly complex by any means, but there's just more to it than this. Next, we come to Reign in Hell, The Reckoning. This is where we get a new Cabal. A new philosophy has surfaced in the bowels of the pit. That philosophy is that of the faithful. Their quote is, "It is through our rituals and remembrances that we find true strength to lead." Their devout demon is known as a reckoner. Their iconography includes books, stars, and sickles. And their belief is in faith. But not like we have faith here on earth where we have gods that we worship and things. No, theirs is more about honoring tradition and ritual and prayer and things and practices that are part of their daily lives to honor all the souls that constitute their beings. Their leader bonus is meditation on violence, and this is pretty cool. So your leader can choose to just not activate. Can't move, can't attack, can't do anything. But on their next activation, they get +2 to their move, and they double their combat value. You're kind of open and exposed for a turn, but you could set that up. You can make that work to your advantage. Also, once you've meditated, the turn after you've meditated on violence, if you use a soul dice to modify your movement, you get double the face value. So if you spent a 6 on movement, you would get 12 inches of extra movement. That's like the board. Between that and that's a lot. That's real fast. Special abilities are soul connection. The way Soul Connection works is that when one of your demons kills another demon, instead of harvesting that soul dice and rolling it like you normally would, you can choose to immediately consume it and gain a +1 bonus to a randomly determined stat for the rest of the game. It's a d6 roll. On a 1 to 2, it's a move. On a 3-4, it's life. On 5-6, it is combat. At the end of the game, that falls off, goes away. It doesn't carry on between games. That would be way too strong. Then we have their, I forgot the term, their devout demon, the Reckoner. His move is 8, his life is 11, his combat is 6. His first special ability is From War, Make Peace. And it reads that as long as they have not activated yet during the round, anytime they make a combat defense roll, they can change the result of 2 of those dice to a 6. Their special ability, Make War Upon Thy Enemies, is the kind of standard starts at 0 and then builds over time. And theirs is every time they make, you get a 6 for a combat defense roll, see above, you get to add 1 to that score. It's a reckoning score is what it's called. It starts at 0. When you make a combat attack roll, you can choose to reroll any number of dice equal to or less than your reckoning score. Once you roll any of those, use that for any rerolls, however, it resets to 0. On their greater evolution, their life and combat goes up by 1, and on their superior evolution, their combat goes up again. And in addition, when they use the ability Make War Upon Thy Enemies to reroll combat dice, after it's complete, it will reset to 1 instead of 0. That's pretty sweet. We also get a new scenario in here. Now, I didn't know. Scenarios. We get some new scenarios. 2 new scenarios. We get Relics of Faith, and we get Profane Ground. In Relics of Fate, you are looking for exactly what it sounds like. You're looking for forgotten knowledge, tomes, liturgies, that kind of thing to bring power to the ever-growing flock of the faithful. In Profane Ground, you are fighting on the site of an ancient demonic battlefield. In that battlefield, there is knowledge that is helpful to any Cabal that is able to gather it. So again, you're on that theme of seeking knowledge. That does it for the Reign in Hell section. That sounds really cool. The new Cabal sounds really dope, but I'm way more excited about a couple of new scenarios. So I may have to scrounge somebody up to play these with me. See what I can do. And lastly in the zine, for the world of Space Station Zero, which is an incredibly massive structure floating through the deepest, darkest, furthest reaches of space. While much of it has been explored, all of it has not been. And since it's our discovery of it, some new stuff has been pulled back out of the reaches of the space station. So in general equipment, we get rapid ascension gear, a stimulant system. The rapid ascension gear negates the paying 2 inches for vertical movement. You just pay 1 inch. And the stimulant system gives you a +1 die when making a movement challenge test. In medical equipment, we get an improved stim shot, and a resuscitation module. The improved stim shot says that once during each challenge when you activate, you can choose to gain +1 movement and +1 to all life challenge tests during that activation. The resuscitation module is basically defibs. You can, once per challenge, when somebody goes down, instead of removing them from the board, you can choose to just leave them there as a token, and then later in the challenge you can resuscitate and pick them back up. In the advanced weaponry section, we get explosive kinetic missile weapons and gravitronic lock weapons. So the explosive kinetic missile weapon is +2 to combat challenges, and anything friend or foe within 3 inches of the target must take a reaction test or suffer damage equal to the amount by which they failed the test, because it's blowing up on the scene. With the gravitronic, now this one's really, 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 really cool. You get +1 dice to combat challenges, and if the attack deals damage, the target has their movement removed or reduced to 0 until the end of that target's next activation. So that's pretty sick. In scientific gear, we get an alien tech neutralizer and an Encyclopedia Xenos. The alien tech neutralizer. Sir. Yes. Hi. Hi. Hold what? The alien tech neutralizer reduces the damage that you take from non-combat challenge tests involving alien technology by 2. And the Encyclopedia Xenos is you gain +2 to all combat and reaction challenge tests involving xenobiology. In the advanced technology, we get an emergency cloning device, an exoskeleton, a nanobot recovery unit, and a personal cloaking device. The device reads that you can use it if or when a member of your crew dies, like fails the check after the game. On a challenge test 4 at a 6+ intelligence, it's an extended challenge, so you can do it multiple times. That person comes back with their gear, providing that you picked their gear up. The exoskeleton, you gain +1 to combat challenge tests and +1 to movement. The nanobot recovery is at the start of your activation, you heal 1 life, kind of like the advantage that I took on my pirate crew and then forgot about half the time. It's gained at the same time during the activation that damage is suffered and may prevent the user from being put out of action. A personal cloaking device, as long as the user has not yet activated in the current turn, they gain +3 dice to all of their combat challenge defense tests against ranged attacks, and in addition, they may choose to reroll any 1s on the combat defense roll. So that's pretty solid. Now, this stuff occupies imaginary. Obviously, it occupies the space on this page in the back of the zine, but it counts the same as the equipment of the appropriate section in the main rulebook. And anytime you would be allowed to choose equipment from that section, you can choose this new equipment. And that brings us to the end of our zine, where we have a nice ad for both Majestic 13 and some pretty cool merch if you want to go check that out. So, final thoughts. The zine itself is $8, which for the micro game, I think $8 is probably a fair price, because that game seems pretty fun. However, if you also have their other games, Reign in Hell and Space Station Zero, then for $8, I think this is an over. Especially for Reign in Hell. The stuff for Space Station Zero is very, very cool, but it's not worth $8. It wouldn't be worth $8 on its own. Then again, I don't think they would charge $8 if it was just that. It would probably be pay what you want, like the Oculus Sphere was, the solo expansion for Reign in Hell. So if you're a fan of Snarling Badger, you like playing their games, or if you're just looking for a fun, quick tank game to play when you've got people over during the holidays that you can show them very quickly and have it up and running very easily, this is a no-brainer. If you're not interested in those things, then it may not be for you. And that's okay, not everything is for everyone, but I am grateful that I have it. I'm looking forward to digging into it and checking out Tanks for the Apocalypse, as well as those scenarios for Reign in Hell. That's going to do it for today and for our conversation about Snarl, the annual extra zine from Snarling Badger Studio. Sorry, my brain just completely paused right there. I know that was kind of weird. Thanks for not making fun of me. This is slated to release. They're saying that this is going to be something that they release in the winter of, like late fall, early winter of every year. So next year, I would assume there would probably be something in here for Majestic 13, since that was their game that just came out this year. There's nothing in there for that. That game's still doing its thing. It's a fun game. I need to get some of that on the table. But anyways, that's beside the point. That's a conversation for me to have with myself and my dog later. Thanks so much for tuning in, hanging out with me. Let me talk at you for a minute. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server, talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in your favor.